Does your child have an EHCP, or are you navigating the education system without one? This video is for parents that are guiding their child through the education system to ensure that their individual needs and their differences are recognised. An EHCP is a legally binding document that specifically outlines the education, health and care and social needs of a particular young person and ensures that the people around them are available to provide them with support. But what happens when your child does have an EHCP, however, the purpose of the plan doesn't necessarily reflect the experience that they're currently having within their education, or that what they're experiencing is so great that it would be really difficult to anticipate what it would be like without having one? My name is Brenda and I'm a parent mentor and a fellow parent. I support parents raising children with individual needs and differences to stay empowered whilst they navigate through procedural challenges. And I like to provide some videos that outline our shared experiences about what we encounter daily as we ensure that our child's individual special educational needs are taken into consideration and are recognised. So in this video, I want to share my first-hand experiences as a parent supporting my child who has ADHD and autism and other medical conditions. He has been in receipt of an education and healthcare plan for the last 12 years. Previously, it was known as a statement, and during our experience, it has had its peaks and its troughs, and I would like to highlight the pros and cons of what we've experienced whilst ensuring that his education and his development are on track. So from my personal experience and working with parents, I'm very aware that obtaining an EHCP is not always straightforward. And I'd love to know what your experiences are currently and whether you are looking to access one, or you currently have one, or you've had one for many years and want to know how things are for you and what you feel your pros and cons are. So now I'm going to talk about my perspective, and if any of this resonates with you, please feel free to share. So what is an EHCP? An education and healthcare plan. A document that sets out the education, healthcare and social care needs of a child or young person for whom extra support is needed in school. How does an EHCP help? It helps by providing guidance and information to professionals that are involved in supporting your child. And it helps them to recognise what needs to be done, where it needs to be done, how it needs to be done, why it needs to be done, and from who. And with this information, they're able to have an idea of what your child or my child's interests, strengths and weaknesses are, so that they're in a position to be able to ensure that they get the support that they need in a nurturing environment. So over the years, this plan has helped immensely when things go to plan. However, when things don't go to plan, it has had a negative impact on my child in the sense of how he's able to manage his skills and how he's able to manage his motivation and excitement for learning. So there has been equally some pros, but when the pros don't go well, the cons are very easy to recognise and identify. So here are the pros and the cons. So the first pro is that it's time sensitive. So what I mean by time sensitive is that it has time scales that everyone needs to adhere by. So professionals and teachers and the local authority are very aware that certain things need to be done at a certain time. And that really helps with things such as transitions, such as going from primary school to secondary school, and secondary school onto further education onto adulthood or employment, whatever that may be. And it's unique to your child's individual needs, because when we think about developmental milestones, that may be different for different children. And as a parent, feeling content in knowing that the plan is actually individualized to your child's needs rather than given as an umbrella for what is required within the narrative or according to society. Another pro is that it provides evidence. What I mean by providing evidence is that with everything being documented, it means that all the information is there. So if we want to look back at perhaps something that had happened previously, that information is there, and it can help support somebody who's looking at something currently that might have come up. And it has information where if there is the unknown and no one is aware of what your child needs, or perhaps something has happened such as a meltdown, or maybe they don't have access to something that they need to be able to regulate their emotions, referring to the EHCP is definitely a good place to start in knowing what it is that your child would like. And as a parent, if things do come up or someone new comes in and they don't have that information, signposting them to an EHCP makes things a lot more easier to get things back on track if they do deviate. Another pro is that the EHCP is pivotal. What I mean by that is that because it brings everyone together, it allows for decisions to be made, and it allows for me as a parent to think about what can happen moving forward and how I would like to support my son moving forward with how it's going to look like. So it's where you can take information from professionals, whether it's a speech and language therapist, an educational psychologist, because everyone will be able to put their input into this report, and especially when it's up to date, because in that way you can take that information and then decide what action needs to be taken. And it does allow for collaboration, and that is what is really important when having interrelations with professionals and the family and those that have a duty of care to support your child. So now I'm going to look at the cons of being in receipt of an EHCP. The cons are that when it's outdated, this has a negative impact on your child's progress. So in my experience, there has been times where the information within the plan has been and has had a reference to his experience in primary school, and information about his teachers within primary school was still in the plan. This had a detrimental impact on the support that he received currently, because the professionals that were now in receipt of the EHCP had the wrong information to be able to make conclusions and recommendations to support him where he currently was. So the second con would be, I would describe as dormant documents. What I mean by this is that when access to the EHCP to the relevant person that's involved in supporting your child is not available. Now, different schools and settings do manage this differently. Perhaps they might have a pupil passport instead of having the whole documentation available to them. But the EHCP has all the information that is required. So if I give an example, transitioning into secondary school, we know that secondary school is a very different environment. Primary school, it tends to be a lot more personal. The sizes are smaller in terms of the classes and the number of teachers. But when going to secondary school, what your child has to experience is different in terms of their timetable, their responsibilities, who they need to report to, etc. And sometimes in a situation where it's important that the relevant teacher has that information about your child, it isn't available to them. And knowing where they can access that when something really important comes up can be challenging, and this can create some disadvantages to your child's experience and their progress. The final con that I would describe is overlooked. So being in receipt of an EHCP plan has a possibility of your child's abilities being overlooked or not even considered. So in my experience, there has been times where there has been made many assumptions about my child's abilities because he is in receipt of an EHCP. So there's been experiences of going to look at other provisions, and once they're aware that he's in receipt of an EHCP, they tend to have a different response to how they can support him. So where this works is when a setting recognises that they're in receipt of an EHCP, and then they suggest that, yes, let me have a look at that and see if we can actually support their needs. There are other times when the time hasn't been taken to look at my son's individual needs, talk with him, get to know him, assess his situation before making a decision. So there becomes a whole lot of assumptions about what an individual is like due to the fact that they are in receipt of an EHCP. Having an EHCP can mean, will they support your child and can they support your child? And the amount of support and guidance and involvement from a parent is crucial in those moments where the decision is either one or the other as to what your child will experience. And that will be dependent on what is available or what you wish your child to experience. Every child is different in terms of their individual needs and their experiences. The system has helped so many, and it has also failed so many too. What I've heard from many parents is that I should be so lucky because I'm actually in receipt of an EHCP. However, yes, an EHCP can provide life-changing opportunities. However, it does also create some drawbacks and feelings of disappointment and confusion. And having an EHCP has its challenges too. And by acknowledging the challenges, you're allowed to ensure that your voice is heard and recognised so that it's able to identify what can be done to support your child moving forward. The role for us parents is so important in ensuring that our child's individual special educational needs are recognised and considered. And the purpose of the EHCP is important too, to be able to monitor, assess and review progress. Staying empowered to move through any setbacks that happen along the way is the solution, because on this journey as a parent raising a young person with special educational needs, this comes as part of the experience where there can be uncertainty. And if this is something that resonates with you, why not check out my other videos about staying empowered? Or if this is something that you are currently experiencing, why not subscribe, because I'm here to provide some more similar videos. But in the meantime, continue to stay focused, stay empowered and keep creating progress. Thank you for listening.